Sir Francis Drake, pirate, hero, or both? Let me tell you about a man who was called both hero and villain, depending on who you asked. To the English, he was a brave explorer and a national hero. To the Spanish, he was nothing more than a pirate and a terrorist. His name was Francis Drake. Born around 1540 in Devon, England, Drake came from humble beginnings. His father was a farmer who later became a Protestant preacher. Young Francis grew up during a time of religious tension, when being Protestant in England could mean the difference between life and death, depending on who sat on the throne. When Drake was still a boy, his family had to flee their home during a Catholic uprising. They ended up living on a ship in the Thames River. A ship. That's where young Francis learned to love the sea. By his teens, Drake was apprenticed to the master of a small trading vessel. He learned navigation. He learned seamanship. And most importantly, he learned that the sea could make a man wealthy if he was brave enough and ruthless enough to seize the opportunities it offered. Drake was both. In 1567, Drake sailed on his first major voyage to the Spanish Main, that's the Caribbean and the coast of South America. He sailed with his cousin, John Hawkins, on a slave trading expedition. Now, let's be clear about this. Drake participated in the slave trade. This is an uncomfortable truth about many historical figures we celebrate. They did terrible things by today's standards. Drake was no exception. But this voyage would change his life in another way too. The English fleet was attacked by Spanish ships at San Juan de Ulua in Mexico. Most of the English ships were destroyed. Drake barely escaped with his life. From that moment on, Drake hated Spain with a burning passion. And he would spend the rest of his life making the Spanish pay for that betrayal. Over the next few years, Drake conducted what he called privateering expeditions to the Caribbean. Privateering, that's a fancy word for government-approved piracy. Queen Elizabeth gave him permission to attack Spanish ships and colonies. He could keep most of the treasure he stole, as long as the Queen got her share. And Drake stole a lot. He raided Spanish ports. He captured treasure ships loaded with gold and silver from the New World. He became incredibly wealthy and incredibly famous. To the English, he was a hero striking back at their powerful enemy. To the Spanish, he was El Drac, the dragon, a monster to be feared and hated. But Drake's greatest achievement came between 1577 and 1580. A voyage that would make him a legend. Queen Elizabeth secretly commissioned Drake to sail around the world. The official reason? Exploration and trade. The real reason? To raid Spanish colonies on the Pacific coast of South America, where they wouldn't be expecting English ships. Drake set out with 5 ships. Only one would make it home. The voyage was brutal. Ships were lost to storms. Men died of disease and starvation. Drake had to execute one of his own officers for mutiny. They sailed through the treacherous Strait of Magellan at the tip of South America, where violent storms battered the fleet for weeks. But Drake pressed on. When he reached the Pacific coast of South America, he found Spanish colonies completely undefended. They had never been attacked from the sea before. Drake raided them methodically, seizing enormous quantities of gold, silver, and jewels. His greatest prize? A Spanish treasure ship called the Cacafuego. Drake captured it off the coast of Peru and took its entire cargo. 26 tons of silver, 80 pounds of gold, 13 chests of silver coins, plus jewels and precious stones. In one capture, Drake had seized a fortune worth millions in today's money. But now he had a problem. He couldn't go back the way he came. The Spanish would be waiting for him. So Drake did something audacious. He kept going. West across the Pacific, to the Philippines, around Africa, and finally, home to England. On September 26, 1580, Nearly 3 years after he'd left, Drake sailed back into Plymouth with his ship, the Golden Hind, loaded with treasure. He was only the second person in history to circumnavigate the globe. And unlike Magellan, who died during his voyage, Drake had completed the journey himself. Queen Elizabeth was delighted. The treasure Drake brought back was worth more than the entire royal treasury. She knighted him aboard the Golden Hind, making him Sir Francis Drake. The Spanish were furious. They demanded Drake be executed as a pirate. Elizabeth refused. Drake was her hero. For the next few years, Drake continued his raids against Spanish shipping and colonies. He attacked settlements in the Caribbean. He captured more treasure ships. He became the most feared English captain on the seas. In 1587, he led a daring raid on the Spanish port of Cadiz, destroying dozens of ships that Spain was preparing for an invasion fleet. Drake called it singeing the King of Spain's beard. The following year, Drake played a crucial role in defeating the Spanish Armada, but that's a story covered in another lecture. Drake's later years were less successful. In 1595, he and John Hawkins led another expedition to the Caribbean. But this time, the Spanish were ready for them. The raids failed. Sickness swept through the English ships. Hawkins died first. Then, in January 1596, Francis Drake himself fell ill with dysentery. On January 28, 1596, Sir Francis Drake died aboard his ship off the coast of Panama. He was around 55 years old. According to tradition, he was buried at sea in a lead coffin, dressed in full armor. Even in death, El Drac remained in the waters he'd terrorized for so long. So, who was Francis Drake really? To the English of his time, he was a hero. A brave explorer who had sailed around the world. A defender of England who had helped defeat the mighty Spanish Armada. A man who had brought immense wealth to his country and his queen. To the Spanish, he was a criminal. A pirate who stole their treasure and murdered their colonists. A heretic who attacked the Catholic faith. A demon who deserved nothing but damnation. And from our modern perspective, he was all of these things. And more. Drake was undeniably brave. He sailed into unknown waters and faced incredible dangers. He was a brilliant navigator and a skilled military commander. He achieved things that most people of his era could only dream of. But he was also a slave trader, a plunderer, a man who killed and stole in the name of his queen and his faith. He participated in and profited from systems of oppression that we now recognize as deeply evil. History is complicated. Historical figures are complicated. Drake is no exception. What we can say with certainty is this: Francis Drake changed the course of history. His circumnavigation proved that English ships could sail anywhere in the world. His raids on Spanish territory helped establish England as a naval power. His defeat of the Armada, covered in another lecture, ensured England's survival as an independent Protestant nation. Without Drake, the world might look very different today. Whether that makes him a hero, a villain, or simply a man of his time? Well, that's for you to decide.